Hello guys, Fru here. Welcome to today's relevant read. So guys, in today's read, we're going to be looking at this article and doing a deep dive into it, which talks about OKR versus MBO. What are they? Why are they important? What does it mean for you? What's the difference? A lot of questions we're going to be asking and answering about this topic. Let's dive in. Alright guys, welcome back. On this channel we make videos around technology tips, career advice and inspiration, and this article definitely caught my attention as a relevant read. OKR versus MBO. It's almost everywhere around us, but not a lot of people are talking about. So if this is the first time you're hearing about these two terms, OKR versus MBO, guys, in this particular video we're going to be diving deep into them, understanding the definitions, why companies use it, reviewing this particular article on bernardmar.co to give us some good ideas about these two concepts, what the differences are, why they're important, and why you should care. As always, the link to this article will be in the description. I'm going to leave the link to this as the very first link in the description. So if you want to get on bernardmar.co website and have direct access to this article plus a lot of the other content that it has, guys, click on that link, the very first link in the description, and you will have access to that. So that's it. Let's dive in. What is OKR and MBO? Naturally, it makes sense to start with the definitions. So as an employee, if you're working at an organization, sooner or later you're going to come across these two terms. Some people already are familiar with it, some might not be, but sooner or later, if you've never come across this, I'm pretty sure that sooner or later you'll come across these two terms, which is why we're going through this as a relevant read for today. So in my experience, I've been more exposed to MBOs, but OKR is kind of new and it's coming up, so it's important to also understand what it is and why companies are paying attention or gravitating a little bit towards that more, especially tech companies. Starting with MBOs, what does MBO means? Basically, MBO stands for management by objectives. So management by objectives. If you think about yourself working at a company, typically the way companies traditionally did this was every year they would have an annual review where you sit down one-on-one with your manager and you discuss the things that you've achieved, your objectives, and through that you get either raises, you get promotion, you get recognition, and such, right? So this is really the idea around management by objectives. So this has been a popular tool around for many decades. A lot of companies have been using this, a lot of teams have used it. So I'm sure a vast majority of people are probably exposed to management by objectives. On the other hand, OKR stands for objectives and key results, which is a little bit newer and it's still just coming up in the tech circle. It kind of builds on management by objectives, but it's a little bit more newer. So maybe some people haven't heard about this. This might be the first time you're hearing about OKR. But we're going to be going into them a little bit more today, doing some definitions around them. I'm going to highlight those two so we can have some deeper understanding. Before we dive into the differences, let's talk first again about MBOs, management by objective. This was formulated by Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker is a management, I would say, guru or expert, and he wrote a lot of books. And so he really popularized this concept of MBOs, management by objectives. And it's the whole idea MBOs describe a process of defining specific and clear objectives. So is the whole idea that you can define specific and clear objectives for employees within the team and then create a culture of working towards those common organizational goals. All right, so the way MBOs work is, let's say I'm a manager. I have 5 people that report to me, and I report to the CIO, who reports to the CEO. So now we have 3 layers there. Now the CEO sets the goals for the organization. Based on those goals, the CIO would set the goal for the organization for the team, and based on that, I will set my own MBOs for my team, and based on that, each individual employee sets their own MBO. So you can see the hierarchy from individual contributor to manager to CIO to CEO. And the whole idea with MBOs is that if all those goals are aligned, then ultimately everybody will be working towards one direction. And that's why MBOs really became was popularized and really gained a lot of adoption within management circles. So a lot of managers tend to use this. That way, once they're having their one-on-one with their employees at the end of the year, all they have to do is, okay, at the beginning of the year, we said these were the objectives. Now, let's look at these objectives to see how those objectives have been achieved. And supposedly, if those objectives are achieved and those objectives were aligned with that of the manager, whose objectives were aligned with that of the CIO, whose objective was aligned with that of the CEO, then based on that alignment, transitivity, then the organization will be achieving its objectives. So that's really the goal behind MBOs. So if you've never heard about this, I hope this kind of gives us a background into MBOs. And I wanted to share this quick quote. I went on Google and I just did a search here. What gets measured gets improved. You might have heard several variations of this. In management circles, is very common. What gets measured gets managed. My favorite version of it is what gets measured gets improved. And the whole idea behind management by objective is, let's set a set of objectives that we can measure, we can manage, and to hopefully improve it. Again, going into why management by objective really became popular. And these are some examples. I just went on this site and I searched for management by objectives, so you can see how MBO examples. I wouldn't read every single thing there, but you can see how the company can set its own MBOs, right? So you can have the MBOs at the level of the organization, at the very top level. So imagine the CEO of an organization setting these MBOs, and they say, well, our goal is to become the market leader, right? Our goal is to increase customer retention by 92%, and our goal is to increase gross margin by 10%. Now, we have this top level MBOs that have been set. How do we break that down so that every team can be aligned and everyone is working in the same direction to these particular MBOs? Now you can have the marketing team setting their own MBOs, which would be aligned to what the higher level organization MBOs are. So they can say, well, if we want to increase gross margin by 10%, then right, we want to increase our marketing ROI by 7.5%, right? And now the marketing team can have its own MBOs, which are all directly aligned to the MBOs set by the top level organization. And not just the marketing team, now you can have the sales team having their own MBOs, right? Hit a win rate of 20%, decrease sales cycle to 3 months, right? And so that could be the sales team and human resources, and everyone now can have their own MBO. So let's say engineering. Now engineering can have their own MBO of saying, okay, we need to complete 350 story points per team. All right, now that's the MBO for the engineering. Now you break that down, so you have an engineering manager who takes this MBO now, and he has, or she has 5 or 10 people reporting to him or her, and each of those people's MBO now will be aligned towards realizing these goals. All right, so how can that individual contributor set their own MBO within the engineering team to ensure that at the end of the year or whenever this evaluation is done, that this MBO was met? And so you kind of have that hierarchy, that pyramid that kind of builds up into making sure that from the bottoms up or top down, those actually top down more so, because the MBO usually comes from the top down. We're really making sure that the organization is all working in unison. So Peter Drucker was the one that popularized this. If you want to hear about Peter Drucker, if you've read anything about management, taking an MBA class or any management class, guys, sooner or later Peter Drucker's name is something that will come up. A lot of management books have been written by Peter Drucker. So here is a little bit of his bio. He 1909 to about 2005, it seems like that's when he died. Founded the founder of the modern management. But let's just look at his books, guys. His books, there's a lot of books, right? So if you have anything to do with management, Peter Drucker is somebody that you're gonna come across sooner or later. He talks about some of his books: The Effective Executive, Managing Oneself, Changing the World of the Executive. So there's just a ton of books from Peter Drucker. Highly recommend to at least be familiar with him if you're not, or maybe read some of his books from a management perspective. They're really fascinating. And then in addition to Peter Drucker, one other book I want to recommend really quickly here is The Pursuit of Wow, and this is from Tom Peters, which again is another book that talks not necessarily just management, but overall as a business person. This book is really a very powerful book. I've read it a couple of times. I highly recommend some of the lessons in there to survive in business environments through management, through basically how can you wow your customers. And your customers don't necessarily have to be people who buy a product, right? Your customers could be other members within your team. Your customers could be higher level up executives. Your customers could be other companies that use your product. So very fascinating book. So given that we're talking about management here, management by objectives and objectives, guys, this could definitely be a good objective for you to read this book. All right, let's go back to where we were. So MBO, we've gone through, we've given a definition of MBO. We've seen how MBO really starts from the top down, right? The team set, the organization sets that MBO, the CEO per se, or the board of directors, they set that vision, they set the mission, they set what they want to accomplish. Now the individual organizational units align their MBOs to what the upper level has set, and now individual teams align that to the units, and the individual employees are aligning that. So that really gives you that pyramid where everybody is marching in the same direction. That's what an MBO is. Let's define the OKR in this article as Bernard Ma went through. So we saw that OKR stands for objectives and key results. Let me highlight this here really quick. So objectives and key results. Naturally, you know, the first time I saw this, I was like, but why? How is this different anyways from an MBO? It all sounds the same, right? Objectives and key results. And that's really the essence of this article, so we can talk about the difference. But to get to that point, let's just get a quick definition out of the way. So OKR stands for objective and key results. It was popularized by companies like Google, which is why a little bit earlier I mentioned you might see this a lot in the tech circle. I haven't worked for Google, so I haven't come across OKR, but I've been seeing this more and more, and that's why this video is about time and it's due for us to make. So in fact, OKR has been around for decades, right? So it's been for decades, but I just haven't been exposed to it. The concept was introduced by Andrew Grove, former CEO of Intel. All right, so that's a name to be familiar with in the early 80s, called the ISO venture capitalist. All right, let's dive into the actual definition. Like MBOs, the OKR approach is about setting strategic goals. All right, however, it goes further than the MBO, breaking down strategy and execution into two parts. So the O, which is the objective, and then the K, or the KR, which is the key results. So basically, and we're gonna go through this, let's highlight two parts here to show the difference with OKR. So basically, MBO has management by objective. So they manage you by the objectives that you set. All right, but once you look at OKR, it's not just objectives. Of course, you still set the objective. So in some sense, OKR builds from MBO, but in addition to that, there is a key result, right? So OKR, the O stands for objective, which is the what. The key result dives into the how. So if you look at it, and these differences are going to highlight this once we start looking at the differences. Management by objective, what do you want to achieve? Tell me. You want to reduce customer churn, you want to increase revenue, you want to reduce cost. Those are the objectives. The how part of it is missing from an MBO. But once you go into an OKR, it's not just the what do you want to achieve? Sure, I want to achieve reduce customer churn, which is the objective. But what are the key results you need to hit in order to meet that objective, right? So to reduce customer churn, maybe you want to decrease the number of errors in the product. Maybe you want to increase the response time from the customer services team, right? So there are a lot of things that you can do, key results that you can have in place to meet that objective. And if those key results are hit, then naturally the objective will be accomplished. So now you're not just having a what, you have a why. So that's really part of it. I know I've kind of given the differences here, but let's go into the answers or the differences that Bernard provided in this article. So exactly are the differences? It's clear MBO approaches. We can read the fluff. I'm gonna skip through that. So let me highlight this one here, and this is what we just talked about, where MBO sets out what you want to achieve, while OKR sets out what and how you want to achieve. I think we've talked about that already. So MBO is just management by objective. What is the objective? You sit down one-on-one with your manager at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, and you say, right, these are my objectives for the year. These are the things I want to achieve. I want to take so and so product to production. I want to deliver so and so solution. I want to acquire so and so customers. I want to decrease cost by so and so amount, right? Those are your objectives. But in OKR, sure, those objectives are still there, but now you need to include the key results. What are the key results that you're gonna achieve? Those are tangible things that if you achieve, not just objectives, but if you achieve those key results, then those objectives naturally are met. So I already went through this, so you can start looking at key results. If you want to reduce customer churn, what are the key results, right? You want to put out less buggy software. You want to increase the response time of the support team. There are a lot of things that you can do as key results in place to meet those objectives that you've set. So that's really the difference. One tells you what, the other one tells you what and how. All right. And I believe that that's why, companies like Google are finding favor with the OKR approach. All right, so that goes into what we just discussed. The next one, MBO is reviewed annually. OKR is reviewed usually quarterly. As I mentioned in the beginning, I've been exposed to MBOs in some of my previous roles. I've worked in companies where MBOs was used basically every year, every calendar year. Usually it was, I don't think it was fiscal year, usually it was a calendar year. We go through this process and we set the objectives, do all the annual reviews and all of that, right? But OKR is really pushing that from annually to quarterly. And if you think about it in the tech space, it makes sense, right? For companies like Google, you don't want to be giving feedback to an employee if you're doing your review or looking at your key objectives after 1 year. That's just too long of a cycle, right? So in companies that need to iterate fast, that need to be innovative and move fast, the quicker you give the feedback to somebody, or see if they are online or on track with their key results and such, the better, right? That way they can pivot, they can make changes. But if you have to wait for 1 year, guys, then that becomes really that's just too long. In the technology space, is too long, which is why I could see why OKR is being favored from technology circles versus MBO. Doesn't mean that teams cannot decide to do MBOs quarterly, and naturally I think that's where a lot of this will be going, to do the MBOs quarterly versus doing that annually, just because the cycle for that is annually. If you really think about it, seems like eternity when it comes to the technology space. So quarterly is really where OKR differentiates from an MBO. All right, and here it talks about, indeed, if Peter Drucker, who wrote a lot of books and popularizers, was writing his book today, I would have no doubt he would specify more regular reviews. All right, so the traditional approach of doing things annually is just too long. All right, the next one here, MBO is private and siloed, OKR is public and transparent. That's another key difference. So this is difference number 3 that we're seeing. I remember when I did MBOs in one of my previous roles. Basically, that was annually, calendar cycle. Usually we did it around February. I remember February, March. Well, we started by February and then you need to be done by March for some reason also at the time. And we was basically done with the management, with the review, the annual review. So that's the time we sit with the management, with my manager, we go through my annual review, feedback and all of that, and my objectives. And that was done in private. Of course, if you think about it, when you're doing your annual review, this is not a public thing. In most companies, it's usually private. You have your MBOs specific to you, with your manager, you are aware of. If you meet your MBOs, you're happy and you can get the raise and the promotion. If you don't, you might get some reprimand, but it's all private. It's all private. Like my MBOs are my MBOs. I don't know what my co-workers' MBOs are. I don't know what my the other teams MBOs are. So it's very siloed, it's private, and it's there's a lot of secrecy around that. But OKR is a little bit, takes a little bit of a different approach, which makes everything public. So when you set the objectives, or the team sets the objectives, those objectives are known by everyone, and the key results are known by everyone. And so you can know that, well, person A has this objective and key results, person B has this objectives and key results, and if there are synergies in things that you can do to help each other on the objectives and key results, now you can start tapping into those. Maybe teams have objectives and key results. If there are synergies, because everything is public and transparent, teams can then tap in on those synergy, work together towards a common effort. If you are aware of it, you can't really work together towards a common goal if you have no idea what those goals are, because it's all private and siloed. So that's where OKR really differentiates itself, by making things a little bit more public and shared across teams. All right. So in this case, it talks about anyone can see anyone else's OKRs, from the CEO to the shop floor worker. All right. So the organization might want to have, or the CEO might have an OKR of I'm just thinking of a word here, of a clean environment to please customers. Maybe customers really care about the decor and the cleanliness of a store. That's very important for them to buy a product, right? So the objective of the CEO is to ensure that the stores are kept in clean order. Well, those are the same objectives of the shop floor worker or of the janitor. So now, if they know they're all sharing the same objective here, they can work towards something common. But if they have no idea, if the janitor has no idea that the CEO cares about clean floors, they might just not really be hitting on that objective or key results as much as they could. So very important from a transparency perspective, and that kind of cascades down to the individual teams. Next point here, MBO is tied to compensation, while OKR usually isn't, right? Again, as I mentioned, I was exposed to MBO at one point. It was tied to compensation. Basically, you hit your MBOs, you more than likely got a good promotion or a good pay raise, right? If you didn't quite meet your MBOs, basically it affected compensation. So people would want to meet their MBOs as much as they could, right? Because who doesn't want to, be compensated for the work they do? But OKR usually isn't. So OKR is objectives, key result. It comes as part of the role within the organization, something that you just have to do it. All right. And then MBO is naturally risk adverse, while the OKR is aspirational. So when companies set MBOs, they set MBOs for things that they can achieve, because you're hoping that, well, I want to set things that I can achieve, because if I don't meet my MBOs, I get penalized for my compensation. So why don't I set MBOs? So at the end of the year, I say, well, look, these were my MBOs. We agreed on this. I achieved them. Now give me my pay raise, right? So people want to be conservative. They want to set realistic things, right? No one wants to go above and beyond to stretch the boundaries with MBOs that at the end of the year, you said, well, you're going to build this new innovative product and take a chance on it, but you didn't take it to production and it failed. So you're gonna get penalized for it because your MBOs weren't met, right? And so that makes it naturally risk adverse, and people don't want to set very ambitious, daring MBOs. The terms I've seen for this is BAC MBOs, right? Which is big, hairy, audacious goals, right? If you've never heard of this, it's called BAC. So big, hairy, audacious goals. So no one was setting BAC goals, all right, because they want to set things that they can actually achieve, realistic MBOs. But for OKRs, because it's not tied to compensation, people can then really go on the limb to those moonshot kind of projects, to very ambitious objectives, which if they meet, then great. If they don't, you're not still penalized. You're not penalized for compensation. So if you look at technology firms again, like Google, and companies that want to be innovative, that want to stretch the boundaries, that want to try new things, take risks, fail fast, wake up and keep going, OKR makes sense because it's that aggressive and usually very aspirational in terms of what people come up as their objectives and the key results they want to use for that. All right, so that kind of takes us through some of the differences, and then in conclusion here, while MBO remains popular, it remains a popular way of setting goals and measuring performance, OKR approach is gaining a lot of traction. So OKR is gaining a lot of traction. Let's highlight that, and with good reason, particularly because it's more regular review cycle, aspirational quality. Its association with Google, of course, right? If you're associated with Google, people always think that that's premium, so there was some plus going for that. And I think we'll be hearing a lot more about OKR in the near future. So guys, there you have it, a quick review or relevant read of this article. OKR versus MBO, what's the difference? The whole goal for this was not just to talk about the difference. As you've seen, we've done a breakdown and explanation of what they are, the definition of the two, OKR versus MBO. We've understood what the definitions are, and we've also seen the differences. Now, you might be working for an organization that's using one or the other. It doesn't mean that one is right, one is wrong. They are clearly different, so we can make arguments of which is right, which is wrong, which you want to choose. You might be a manager, you're kind of wondering which should you choose for your team. That's not really the purpose of this article. It's really just to review a definition of it and understanding what the differences are. Now, because we make videos on this channel around technology tips, career advice, and inspiration, guys, as a career professional, it's important to have this. It's important to know this. You might be going to a yearly review. OKRs, MBOs, be familiar with those. That way you're not stumped in case the company is using one or the other. So guys, I'm gonna leave a link to this book that I recommended below, the Tom Peters, The Pursuit of Wow. A great book. I think every 2 or 3 years I come back to this book to read, just because of how powerful it is. If you have any aspiration to go beyond being an individual contributor to being a manager, a leader, or just achieving more, this is for your customers, for your business, for your organization. This is a must-read book. And the whole list of Tom Peters' book, of Peter Drucker's book. It's interesting how you have Tom Peters, Peter Drucker, like a lot of Peters in there. Peter Drucker's books, any one of these books, guys, is always a great read for Peter Drucker. Alright guys, so there you have it. OKR versus MBO, what is the difference? An amazing review from Bernard Marr. So check out the link in the description. Follow Bernard. He creates a lot of content on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. He's everywhere. So definitely check it out from his blog. And guys, please consider subscribing if you haven't subscribed to our channel. I really hope to get you on board. Subscribe, recommend articles, relevant reads that we can take and break down and share for others to see. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining us today. This has been Fru, and I'll see you in the next relevant read.